Welcome to another episode of Music Musings. As always, I'm Derek, and with me is Pat. Pat,
Hello.
how we doing? Happy 4th.
Happy 4th. Anyone who's been celebrating, I hope you guys are celebrating safely. It's been a very sticky past 48 hours, and now we're going into a thunderstorm. So you know what? I'll take a thunderstorm
Multiple
over the heat wave.
storms. Yeah.
Multiple. Okay. Yeah. I still take that over the heat wave.
Absolutely. There's also, I don't know if you heard about, there was a seaplane that crashed today in the East River.
What?
Everybody's okay. Everybody was okay, thankfully.
Good. That was like my first question. Like, oh gosh.
But it was like a seaplane, and I don't know what happened, but it apparently had a very hard landing. They didn't release why. So I don't know. Just eventful. Eventful 4th of July.
Very much. I'll co-sign that. But
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, we're all good. Everybody's good. Been rocking with some
Yeah.
good music. Can't wait to get into this topic today.
Yeah. And today we are going to be talking about American music, how it started, some key artists, some of the genres that America is known for. But we'll get into that. But before we jump into that, let's get into the new releases and our musings of the week. So I'll jump off with the new releases this week. Starting off with Madonna, album called Confessions 2. Heard a bit of it. And it's interesting. It's not, I'm not a big Madonna fan to begin with, but it's got a lot of songs in there. Like I liked Bring Your Love, Everything, and then there was, what was the other one? One Step Away. Those are pretty good. A little bit more up-tempo, dancey vibe to them. It sounds very like, I don't know how to explain it, but the sound is similar, like what you would expect from like 1980s kind of vibe.
Okay.
But with like modern producing, so it has more of a clean sound. And it's legendary Madonna lyrics with melodies and pop hooks. So it's good. I think it's good. If you have a moment, check it out. It's interesting at least. So something for everybody.
Yeah, it's Madonna. I mean, that's enough for me to at least give it a chance.
Yes, absolutely. Then we have Sienna Spiro, Visitor, new album. I'm going to be honest, I haven't heard it, so I have to check it out myself.
Yeah.
But, we're putting that out there. New releases this week. Check that out. The Queen Bee, Beyonce, released a new single yesterday, July 4th, called Morning Dew. Haven't heard that either, but it's Queen Bee, so I'm positive it's gonna be a bop of sorts.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna check that out later today, definitely. And finally, we have Low Cut Connie. Oh yeah, that is that's a single, I believe, and I haven't heard it either. I have not heard that as well.
I'm not gonna lie. I haven't heard any of them, so I'm worse.
We have some listening to do ourselves, but
yeah,
here are the new releases for this week. Check it out. Let us know what you think on our website. And yeah, that's what we got.
Yeah.
So let's get into the musings of the week. Why don't you start us off? What are you jamming out with this week?
All right. So for me, been listening to the Vince Staples, the last album, Cry Baby. Personally, I've been into some pop punk listening lately, and for some reason, Vince Staples is still in my rotation.
Okay.
Can't stop listening to it. Next, I've been vibing old school, Bob Marley. I grew up on it. If everything that Bob Marley and the Wailers has done has pretty much been like a very background music for me as a growing up. So I like that kind of like nostalgic vibe. Obviously, my favorite song, Waiting in Vain, is always going to be a perfect I think it's one of my favorite love songs, reggae wise. Maybe no, just reggae and just love songs in general. Next, I've been going back into some '90s hip hop. A Tribe Called Quest, fantastic. Yep, see, the jazzy melodic sampling, production wise, it's very crisp. It's great for any vibe. Obviously, anyone who knows Tribe Called Quest knows what they're getting with them.
Yeah.
And last but not least, I've been listening to Naomi Sharon, the album. It's Lost in Paradise, I think it is. It's such a I think it's No Crying in Paradise. I forgot the name of the project, but it's really good. It's it has a blending of house, African sounds, R&B, elements of pop. It's so good. There's a lot of range in that album and production wise, which I was very impressed by. But that's what I've been rocking with for the past week.
Nice.
Yeah. How about you, brother?
So for me this week, I have been listening to Bayside, which was one of the first pop punk bands I started listening to, specifically the album called Killing Time. This is one of my favorite albums by them. I think it just has a lot of it's a little bit of a different sound for them. And the title track on their Killing Time is one of my favorite, especially for the drum parts. I just love the way that they engineered the drums and produced the drums on this album. They sound big, bold, loud. So if you haven't heard of Bayside, please go check them out. I've gone back to Daniel Allen, who is a DJ producer. He's got a lot of fun bops, and I like to throw him on for my workout playlist. It's high energy, it's fast, it's got really good hooks. He has some good features on there every once in a while, like his big title tracks. So if you haven't checked him out, check out Daniel Allen. And then, while we're into it, I had to go back to my boy Zed.
Of course.
Just a lot of fun bops. So I've been
Clarity,
jamming out with
man.
that. Yeah. And if you haven't heard of Zed, are you under a rock? Like, where are you? So
yeah, just I'm a co-sign with Derek said, and please pause the podcast, go listen to Clarity by Zed, come back, you'll understand.
Right. Fist pumping everywhere.
Early 2010s, man. Oh, great. I'll stop.
But let's get into today's topic, which, it's 4th of July, so a little bit of America. Why not? We're going to talk about what is American music, where did it start, what are the big elements of it, and, we'll have some questions. We'll discuss some of our favorite genres while we're going over this. So getting into it, American music is a very big, diverse mosaic of many different styles born from a blend of indigenous, West African, and European cultures. And it is truly defined by its hybrid in those roots. America is a big melting pot. Wow, I said plot.
Maybe, but go on.
So it combines many different elements from many different cultures, combining rhythmic and vocal traditions from enslaved communities with European instrumentation and harmonic structures, which then evolved into foundational genres like jazz, blues, country, and rock and roll. So American music, there's not a definitive one genre that really defines it. Many people say, oh, rock and roll. It's like, no, jazz was also huge and is still huge and has been copied by many other countries around the world. And jazz started in America. So America is really this huge, just like I said, melting pot of all these different cultures. And, from that, we've gotten these beautiful genres of music that have contributed a lot to, music today has certainly evolved from that. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So getting into it, African-American roots and influences. First, we have, gospel, spirituals, choral and vocal traditions heavily shaped by religious worship, which, you know, laid down the groundwork for a lot of modern vocal techniques. Gospel music, you know, is heavy in beautiful harmony, with strong, usually solo artists that will develop these beautiful melodies within. And it was built around, you know, and shaped by religion. People would go, and still happens today, of course, to church. And a big part of that was singing in church. And this is where gospel music formed. And I think today it's just, you know, you listen to these beautiful gospel choruses, and the harmony and melodies that come out of these songs are just unmatched. Like you don't hear that anywhere else in the world. So that kind of laid the groundwork for a lot of different genres, and many different vocal techniques that have been adapted and you know, have evolved from gospel music. And then, of course, we get into blues and jazz, which this came out of the South. You know, blues blends West African call and response, which is a technique that's used, you know, you play a certain melody, a certain rhythm, and either the audience or the other musician will kind of respond to your call, which is whatever you're singing or playing. And this was developed with European structures. So what I mean by that is it's just developed with other kind of chord progressions or you know, arrangements that were developed from the European countries. But jazz emerged from, you know, or in New Orleans as a fusion of ragtime, blues, and brass band music, representing one of America's most globally influential art styles. And this is still very present today. There's many different cultures around the world, countries that come to America to learn jazz. And I remember, you know, I went to music school, and I joke about it all the time, Five Towns College. But, you know, we were a small jazz school. It was, you know, they taught from jazz music theory. And we had a lot of international students coming from many different countries to come and learn jazz, because it still wasn't a big style in the countries that they were coming from. So, you know, the best way to get exposed and to learn it is, you know, to go to the country that started jazz. So that was always something I remember kind of in college, seeing a lot of different students from outside America coming to learn jazz. Which, I mean, it's cool to see. And I you know, something that's still influential to this day.
Yeah. I just wanted to add on to what you said about jazz, which is wonderful, is like, as you said, like different people from different countries come here to learn jazz from, you know, various different instructors, and they bring it back to their respective countries and then add whatever is like their native instruments or sounds and add it to it. And then the most recent one I'm going to think of is Japanese, because like I've heard like artists that are Japanese jazz players, and it's like it sounds so wonderful. And then there's elements of like I want to say the shamisen or certain instruments that are native to their land, and then they incorporate it into the sound, and it's like it's a whole new vibe. But that's just the immense influence jazz has on just the world. And you know, and to combat, I'm sorry, to further a little bit more with jazz, like hip hop and R&B, and especially with gospel and music. Gospel and jazz blues gave birth to hip hop R&B as we know it. So like the core structure of you know, a lot of the famous singers from the R&Bs of the 80s, 90s, and even 2000s, if you were to kind of like pull where did they get their start singing, majority of them are going to say in a choir at a church, or you know, in some sort of like youth group associated with gospel or worshiping. So you're absolutely correct. Like these are within the African American community in particular, not just African American community. I think it's all of America. Like
Yep.
jazz, blues, like the range and reach it has in America and worldwide. It's so amazing to see it. And it's just that we are so, lucky that we have such a beautiful sound that's here, and it also represents like a universal experience, not just for Americans, just people in general in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah.
And I love that. Yeah. Taking taking what they learned about jazz and kind of infusing it with their culture. I mean, that's exactly how music evolves. Which you hear that in a lot of like modern jazz now. It's very different from, like what Miles Davis would play or anything like that. It has a much different sound. Absolutely, 100% agree with what you're saying. And blues is very similar to, I think, jazz. It has a lot of the same elements. Of course, you have like 12-bar blues, which it's just a specific chord pattern that people play when you play blues. There are elements that I think are a little bit different. Blues often tells a story and has a very key vocal element to it in telling that story, where jazz, doesn't always have a vocal component. It can, of course, but it very much can just be, jazz trio, quartet, whatever it is, or it's just instruments. So they kind of play off of each other. And it's very similar. But continuing, I think going into, folk music, Americana, folk and bluegrass music was very much, it's a story of the people, pretty much, is how I kind of think of it. It's music that is passed down through generations and created in the beginning by working class communities. And it's a lot of like, people think of it as, these cowboy songs and are generally played on, acoustic instruments like the banjo, guitar, fiddle. And that is very much how it started because, again, folk music was this is music at first that wasn't meant to be played on like a stage or at a show. It was just music that, people who worked all day would come home, grab their banjo and just start playing a song that they're talking about their life. And they would take those songs and pass it down to generations who would change it a little bit here and there, maybe add some of their life story to it. And that would just kind of continue. And I think elements of that still exist today in like modern folk music. But it is different, obviously, because, people are now playing it live on stage at these big arenas. So it's a little bit different, of course. But I think that's just, how music kind of evolves. You can't really help that, especially if it's popular. And then we have Americana, which is just a term that's used, and it's actually used by the Americana Music Association to describe the blending of roots traditions like folk, country, gospel, soul. So like all those elements of, those genres of music kind of fall under this umbrella of Americana music. And that's really all that means. It's not a specific one genre. It can be a few different genres that are connected to, the American culture or how, America songwriting.
Right.
So, and then we get into popular music and rock. And I think these are, as the name says, the most popular genres that most people know. But also in there is country music, which is really just evolved Southern folk and blues music. And it features lyrical storytelling and instruments, like the pedal steel guitar and the acoustic guitar. But, it's interesting that outside of New York, country music is like the biggest genre, hands down.
Yeah.
Like it's not even close. And it's interesting. Like New York is really, I think, only one of the few states that country's not number one. Like the most listened to genre.
Right.
So, it says a lot about us New Yorkers, huh? But, and then we have, of course, rock and roll, which fuses, rhythm and blues, R&B, country and gospel. And it really has become a global cultural phenomenon and is heavily shaped by a lot of the big pioneers, Chuck Berry, and of course, Elvis Presley for kind of launching rock and roll into what it has become. And even rock and roll now, like that genre has kind of branched off into like many different sub-genres that all kind of fall from rock and roll. And then, of course, we have hip hop, which was developed right here in New York in the 70s. And it's a global musical cultural movement that features rhythmic speech, turntables, and a lot of sampling. And a lot of these elements still exist, I think, today, but of course has been evolved. And as technology has become more sophisticated, I think artists have become more sophisticated with how they use it and more creative.
Yeah.
So, the sound has changed a little bit, but it's still there. Hip hop is still huge, especially here in New York. But it's one of those, I think another global genre that just kind of took off, especially in the 70s.
Yeah, definitely.
So, we'll pause here before we get into our next segment, but I think, what genre of, American music do you think you listen to the most and why?
All right. And funny thing is, like growing up, half my family is obviously born here. The other half is from Jamaica. And growing up in America, I've always listened to, hip hop, R&B, rock and roll, gospel, all kinds of different genres. But in terms of my own, if I had to do a poll, it's going to come down to hip hop. And the reason why it's that is because of it blends everything that I love about music because of the origin of the blues. For example, like the 1930s and 40s, like blues singers were singing about very heavy topics and very heavy conversations that weren't really taken seriously. So a lot of blues wasn't really mainstream. So with elements of that transitions to hip hop, which is talking about, society, about, whether experiences of the working class or individuals like just going through America and their own, experience. And I think for me, hip hop does a very good job of illustrating what African American culture is, but not just African American culture, but just urban lifestyle in general. That's why so many people kind of get connected to it. So when you hear somebody like Nas, or you hear somebody like, Eminem, who's rapping about like struggles of, growing up without a parent in the home, or growing up with different struggles, problems with the police, problems with society, problems with it. So it's that, and then it also allows us an ability to celebrate certain things. Celebrate, like Summertime with Fresh Prince and Jazzy Jeff, which is literally like we talked about. So it's taking elements of genres that I've always enjoyed, and it's blended in a way that it's such a fun way to kind of like explore what it is to be an American, in my opinion, or New Yorker in particular, but just American. So yeah, I think that summarizes it for me. What about you?
I think for me, I would go under probably the like popular music and rock. So I guess for me it would be more rock and roll, but also blues and jazz. So like I think those would be my two top. And of course, like I said, rock and roll has branched into many subgenres. But I think at least some of the bands that I listen to, I think have elements of what you could say like rhythm and blues could be, and some have like the storytelling of like folk music, whether they're talking about their own lives or something else like another event that has really shaped their musical aspirations. And then jazz, I mean, I still listen to jazz, classics, but also I try to listen to like new artists in the jazz world to just kind of keep up with what's happening. Because I really do like that. I like the sound of jazz and, the technique and just the songwriting ability within. It just keeps it interesting. So I would have to say those would be probably the two genres I listen to the most.
Respect. Good ones too.
Yeah. And kind of segueing into our second segment here, talking more about jazz and blues and its impact on global music. We brought up a little bit about it before of how it influenced, many different cultures and countries. But, the blues provided the essential chord patterns and progressions, storytelling structures, vocal techniques that really power a lot of modern music today. And, this kind of first started with what they called the British invasion. And this was like in the 50s and the 60s. European and British musicians discovered American blues records. And this fascinated and birthed the British blues movement, which became the launchpad for global rock giants like the Rolling Stones and even Eric Clapton. But when I'm talking about, the blues structure that they talk about, something you'll hear a lot when you're talking about blues is it's called the 12-bar blues. And what that means is, there's 12 bars of music or 12 bars of measures if you're looking at sheet music, and there's a specific chord pattern and rhythm that you would play on the guitar or bass. And it outlines what blues should sound like. And this framework is deeply embedded in a lot of contemporary music, ranging from country to even like heavy metal. I've heard it, and it's like a very distinctive sound. If you can put on any Miles Davis or like any old jazz record, Charlie Parker, Duke Ellington, you can hear the 12-bar blues progression. And, if you listen to it enough, you'll start to hear it in like modern music. It's still there. They may use some different chords, but like it's there. So I think that from the blues world still has an impact today in today's music. You still hear it. Getting into jazz a little bit. Jazz really has transformed global music by merging diverse traditions and, making real-time collaborations a thing between artists. So we have global fusions, and this was during the Cold War. The U.S. State Department sponsored global tours by artists like Louis Armstrong to spread American culture and allowing jazz to merge with local traditions. And most notably, giving birth to the Brazilian bossa nova and South African jazz. So this movement really kind of shaped jazz around the world. And similar to what you were saying, they took, jazz music and added their own culture into it. And, we got the bossa nova, which is very popular, very famous style of music, and even the South African jazz. So this was just one tour that Louis Armstrong did, and the impact was already huge.
Yeah.
And that still happens today, kind of like what you were talking about before with students coming to America to learn jazz. It's still something that happens to this day.
Yeah, very much.
And I think, another important aspect of jazz is just improvisation and sampling, which is really, it's just, improv is, you may have something, if you're playing an instrument, you may have an outline of what to play during the song, but there's going to be moments in that song that are not written on sheet music. So you have to know how to, what they call improvise, which is you literally have to make it up on the spot. And it's a very hard skill. It takes many years to kind of develop that. But I think it's something, and it's very much the DNA of jazz, and has blended into contemporary, freestyling, beat making, electronic music production. It's everywhere now. People do solos. That's improvisation. Like, it's all part of it. Yeah. So that has certainly been developed, and it has been, put into music that we know today.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
No, I was just gonna add on to how much you were right. When I was talking about like A Tribe Called Quest, for example, they sampled certain things from the jazz and blues era of the 40s and 50s. And for me, growing up, when we talk about like American music, when you were bringing up Duke Ellington, and I remember I was on the blues side. I remember growing up with my dad always playing B.B. King every Saturday, and or Sunday, and he would clean like his car and like or whatever, and I would hear this music, and it was just like, it was vibrant, and that's how like so many of our modern producers and artists today, or even just further back, were taking inspirations from so many of these like extremely talented players with absolute great piano skills, whether instrument, whether it's a brass, a string, and they're just, with hip hop, when it sampled them, it was combination of continuing the vibe but adding a modern twist to it. And as hip hop will always be, sampling will be a core principle, but as you just said, but over time they've learned to kind of reverse engineer a lot of these advanced techniques from some of the most famous players we know. And a lot of modern producers like hip hop, there's a guy named Zaytoven who's it's a nickname, but he's so good at piano playing, like it's phenomenal. And yes, he can produce hip hop beats, but if you ever just see him play piano, he just plays piano in the studio while artists are just taking breaks. He just sits there and he's just playing like advanced classical pieces. But a lot of the producers have just kind of like taken what famous players have done and genuinely studied it, as well as sampling it, but studied it, and then and now they have more of a very advanced technical skill set, and that's gonna just keep growing as time goes on.
While you were talking, you made me think of an artist, John Baptiste.
Oh, yes.
Who, I mean, he is just a genius in terms of piano playing and blending different styles. I'll never forget, I watched I think it was like a CNN interview they did with him, and they asked him to play Beethoven's Symphony on the piano, which very popular tune, everybody knows it, and he can he plays it very easily. But then they asked him, okay, can you blend this with like gospel, or can you blend this to hip hop? And like in the moment, he could make it, that same piece, sound like it was part of those genres. And that's not easy to do, and he was just able to do that on the fly. So that it's there's a lot of artists out here who can just do that on the fly, and that's unreal.
100%.
So the influence of jazz and blues, like we said, on modern music remains pervasive, particularly in how today's tracks are created and structured. The foundation of R&B and soul, it's the expressive vocal stylings, the chord progressions of early blues, which have directly evolved into rhythm and blues, which remains a massive global industry today. And then even, hip hop sampling. So producers continue to sample legendary jazz and blues records to create foundational hip hop beats, proving the enduring legacy of the genre. So it's still very much used to this day in modern music. And just to give you some names, if you are not big into this style to listen to. There's many more that I'm not listing, but these are good ones to start with. So if we're talking about classical, jazz or blues artists, listen to, of course, Miles Davis, Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, Charlie Parker, who was just a genius with any kind of sax melody lines. Unreal. And then, of course, Max Roach. Like I said, there's plenty of other artists in there. Art Tatum, who I forgot to put on here. Just look at these names and you'll kind of branch off and find all the other artists. And then some current artists that I've listened to. Christian McBride, one of today's most prominent jazz bassists and band leaders. Winston Marshall. Marsalis. Sorry, not Marshall. Is still one of jazz leading ambassadors and an active performer. Look him up on YouTube, and you'll just see how disciplined you need to be a professional musician, not only just in jazz but just in general. It's no joke, and he speaks the truth about the industry. And how hard he had to work at it to get where he is. Right. So Winston Marsalis, look him up. And then John Baptiste.
100%.
He's a very popular artist, but also very skilled, very talented. So if you haven't heard him, check him out. Any other artists you listen to or you want to add to this?
No, I would 100% co-sign Miles Davis, Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong. I grew up on those. Like I said, mainly for my father, and he was into jazz, blues, and rock, and he would play a lot of this. And to me, when I hear right now, and B.B. King in particular on the blues side, but if I hear that, I immediately get transported to a different mindset. I feel like a kid again, but I'm an adult. And now with obviously a combination of just being an adult and as well as living experience, and now as a music producer, I sit there and I feel like a student listening to it. And
right.
And I'm just I'm like a kid in the front row of class, and I'm enjoying a lesson. To me, that's what jazz and blues now as an adult. So it's just other than that, I co-sign Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong, and Miles Davis in particular. Those are what I grew up on. So it's just that's a part of my childhood, and I love listening to it today. So yeah.
So I wanted to ask you a question.
Sure.
And how? Because I know you being a producer.
Yeah.
How do you think you've used elements of maybe jazz or blues in some of your music, if at all?
Yeah, I do. So on the latest album that I released, I was working on that for a while, and obviously conversations with you and me discussing talking about all types
name
of
drop the album. Name drop that album.
Oh man! All right. So anyway, album is called Rhythm Therapy. Oh my God. So album is called Rhythm Therapy, and Derek plays a big factor because we've always outside of the podcast we discuss all kinds of chord progressions and just getting to obviously music nerd stuff. And I always had such an appreciation for complex chords and understanding why they work. So in terms of jazz, I remember you talked to me about it. He's like, you should look at some of the jazz chord progressions, the tension, the threes, and 1-3-5s and stuff like that. And I've just I guess in the last album with the therapy and I wanted to use longer melodies. I wanted to stretch that out. I wanted to use more tension. I wanted to use more I guess complexity of a vibe. So in a sense, yes, I did that with the last album because I wanted to kind of prove that one, you can take any element and blend it together and it could work if you structure it right. So in a sense, yes, definitely. It's changed how I looked at piano. It's changed how I looked at just music theory and chord progressions. Now I'm not even remotely nervous. I sit there and I'm like, what can I do? Like, what can I do now to kind of like add things? I want to think about like, oh, I want to learn more. So now that I have kind of like a general idea, I'm just eager to learn more and get more advanced with it and become more, comfortable. Not in. I one day hope I could be as comfortable in music theory as you are. It still makes me nervous. You look at it like it's a backyard, like I know where everything is, but wait,
absolutely not. I'm nervous all the time.
Oh man, well you hide it better than I do. So. But jazz I think was just to wrap it up. I think jazz was such a good way to get me out of my comfort zone, and now I'm not afraid to be uncomfortable. So I would say that in a sense, jazz definitely played a huge factor in my music. But now I kind of want to flip it back to you, back to your Five Towns college days, learning jazz and everything. So when you first started, like playing drums and learning the jazz style, what was I guess over the years and then the time you were in bands, how did that translate?
I think a couple things. I would never say I'm a jazz player. I'm not. But I definitely took some of the things I learned and tried to kind of infuse it into the style that I would play. Jazz drumming, because I was a drum major, and I think a lot of jazz drumming is very complicated at first. There's a lot of what they call limb independence. So like each limb on the drum would be doing its own rhythm. And that is something, when I stopped playing drums a few years ago, I by no means mastered. There was, there were some things I could do pretty well, but there was still a lot for me to learn. And, I haven't learned it yet. But I think one of the most important things I think I learned from jazz drumming in general is, the ability to keep time. That's really important. And also just dynamics of, how loud am I playing certain parts. Because, jazz drumming, there's a lot of, you have to know dynamics really well. There's going to be soft parts of your playing. Are you playing on brushes? Because there's a singer and you can't overpower the singer. Or you're playing with, brass, or you might be playing with woodwind and you have to adjust how loud you're playing. And I think that was a skill that took a lot of time to develop. And, I kind of carried those things into when I played with, some of the bands I played with, just knowing, and it was kind of like an instinct of, all right, this person's singing, or there might be a solo or something. I'm going to play a little bit softer. Or, the tempo is going to change, or the time is going to change. So I just have to kind of set up the band for that before we go into it, so it doesn't sound like a car crash.
Right.
So I think those are some of the elements I've used throughout the years. And those would be the biggest things I think I learned how to do pretty well, as a drummer.
Right. Yeah, that's it. I'm not gonna lie. The limb, different rhythms and tempos on different like limbs. That sounds, I don't know. That sounds way too complex.
It is. It's very hard, and by no means I was not able to do it. I could do maybe 3 at a time, and that was about it. But there are drummers out there, famous jazz drummers who can do wild things with all 4 limbs, and it's I don't know how you're doing it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, shout out to them.
Yeah. But anyway, let's get into our last segment here. Folk music of the past and today. Folk music was kind of this anonymous, communal, oral tradition that was rooted with the working class. serving to pass down their stories and their cultural identity to generations of their families. And I think today it has kind of evolved into this more contemporary folk, or some people even say like folk revival, I've heard, which is just a formalized genre driven by, credited singer-songwriters, blending acoustic storytelling with modern socio-political themes and experimental production. So it's just gotten more modern through what's happening today and blending different styles. But, at the root of it, folk is really just about the storytelling and using acoustic instruments. And I don't think that has really disappeared, at least for the most part, from most modern folk music. Instead, they kind of, it's branched out into more commercial sound. But when we talk about this folk revival, which was led by artists like Pete Seeger, and it paved the way for modern indie folk and Americana music. So bands like, Mumford and Sons, Fleet Foxes utilized the lyrical and acoustic DNA of the past, but they kind of put it together and package it with more modern production techniques and a distinctive modern introspective kind of lyrical style. But the core elements, I think, are still there in a lot of the true folk music. I'm not talking about like the stuff on the radio, although, you know what? Mumford and Sons has been on the radio, so
yeah,
can't really say that. But, just some artists to compare from the past and today. So Woody Guthrie, he had a very raw acoustic guitar, harmonica, had a nasally, unpolished kind of delivery in his songwriting and his sound. But the vibe of it was very plain spoken. It was politically fierce and deeply embedded in the working class survival. So much about what was happening at the time versus an artist present like Zach Bryan, who has a raspy yet passionate vocals that are layered over acoustic guitar with an occasional fiddle and, sparse, not too much modern production. So it's a bit more of a raw sound than a lot of other modern artists. The vibe, the sound of it is high intensity, emotional, very vulnerable, capturing contemporary blue collar anxiety and personal demons a lot in his song. So I think the connection there between these two artists is, they reject the commercial polished sound in favor of like a raw, unfiltered truth, kind of serving as an intense truth teller for the generations that they're writing songs for, which, I like Zach Bryan. I think he does stick to the roots of it. Some elements are a little bit modern, but for the most part, it is pretty raw and unfiltered. So, and then we have, of course, Bob Dylan, early 1960s. Sound was a lot of, rapid fire, finger picking, like biting his harmonica, a little complex and surrealist kind of poetry in his songwriting. But, if you talk to anyone who really listens to Bob Dylan, he's not known for his voice. He's not, he's not a terrible singer, but he's not the best. It's more about his storytelling, which I think works because, folk music is literally more about that than your technique that you use in how you sing.
Right.
And because of that, the sound, the vibe it can be very intellectual, I would say. Like, you have to really think about what he's saying in his lyrics. Usually you have to listen to his song more than once or twice to really understand it because it can be cryptic. But he was speaking a lot about kind of a revolution socially that would happen. So when I think of him, I'm comparing him to like the artist Fleet Foxes, which has this lush Baroque pop production featuring like these big sweeping orchestral arrangements and like dense vocal harmonies. It's really pretty. So the vibe of it kind of is this cinematic, deeply focused on like kind of nature but also like existential dread. So it's a little different there, but I think the link there, right, is that Fleet Foxes inherits kind of Bob Dylan's appreciation for like high literacy and abstract, lyrics, but kind of they swap his, minimalism sound for like this big, massive wall of sound kind of arrangements. So it's really like they took just a little bit of his songwriting and added in a lot of modern production and arranging to alter that sound. So I'm not a big folk listener myself, but there's definitely art like Fleet Foxes I listen to a lot. I've heard, of course, Bob Dylan, but I'm not a big Dylan fan. And I like Zach Bryan, so I listen to those artists a lot. It's kind of why I mention them here. But it's, folk music is interesting. It's very much like the people's music.
Right.
Because, again, it's like we are writing about our own experiences and perspective on things and really passing that on. But, of course, now in the modern times, it's like they pass it on electronically through Spotify. So it's a little different.
Yeah. But you're right, though, that whether it's, R&B, hip hop, blues, folk, rock and roll, even electronic music, I think there is, especially electronic music, I've discussed in the past of like different parts of America influenced the house sound music that we know now. And then our sound influenced, different parts of the world. But I think the elements of what makes these songs and these genres work so well is what you just said. It connects to like the working class experience. It connects to, are you talking about like working a blue collar job? Are you talking about the struggles, political, socioeconomic challenges that different communities deal with? And that's what I love about all these different genres. They have different arrangements, different maybe chord progressions, patterns, rhythm, but the lyrics and storytelling are about lived experiences of the average American or the average citizen. And you kind of see kind of like a lot of similarities across all of them. And that's why I think, and in particular, I mentioned hip hop because, it was just something I grew up around. But, growing up, I listened to, obviously I've heard some of Bob Dylan's music, blues, jazz, and they're all just telling a story that some of us Americans have either walked in or have known experience through, someone in their community. So yeah, you're right. Yeah. Like I think all of these genres kind of like paint in like kind of just a different version of what makes American music.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, well, I guess this is a repeat, but out of all these genres, which one do you think, or which one do you enjoy the most? Is it hip hop?
It's what it, like I said, it varies based day on day, but it is hip hop if you had to do metrics wise. Like if you pulled up my Spotify, top genre is probably hip hop, then electronic music, and then probably R&B somewhere. But that's just familiarity and things I've just grown up with. But I do enjoy R&B. I do enjoy rock and roll, indie rock. We've had an episode about how indie rock is probably my favorite. But all these different genres. I grew up listening to Metallica. I grew up listening to Linkin Park. I went down early 2000s rock experience earlier. Actually, I was listening to, I think it was a Puddle of Mud. I was listening to Blur.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, you get it.
Yeah.
And 3 Days Grace. Oh, God, you know what? Let me stop. Anyway, and so I like all these different genres because yes, they're using different instruments, different patterns, but they still tell a story that I think is easily easy to connect to. So, but these genres in particular definitely influenced me with like as a producer. I use elements of drum patterns that are within reggae. In electronic music, I use elements of African percussions. I use jazz chord progressions, and I use them with different pianos and even synths. So different various genres have influenced me without a doubt. And I think it's anyone that listens to my music, they kind of like, oh yeah, he uses elements of everything. But yeah. So yeah, hip hop would be number one, but all these genres have affected me one way or another.
I like that. Yeah, I think for me, it would definitely be, rock. I think, again, similar to you, I like to listen to a lot of different genres, but it would be most likely the rock, and more specifically like alternative rock, indie rock would be like where I am. But by no means, I like jazz. I listen to jazz a lot. And, like folk music, I'll listen to it every now and then. I have some artists, Zach Bryan, all them. I'll listen to it, but I think alternative rock is definitely one of my most listened to, and I think a lot of these kind of similar to what you're saying. I think all of these genres have kind of influenced each other, like elements of it. I think artists take a little bit of like, oh, let's take some jazz and maybe influence it or infuse it with some rock. Or even like EDM, take some samples of a jazz artist and let's put that in there.
Yeah.
So I think everything kind of influences every other genre, and I think it should be that way. Right. I think that's going to lead to kind of new sounds and new types of music. So I think they all kind of influence each other. I think that's where that ends. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that was a fun episode, and hopefully all of you at home enjoyed this. As always, please check us out on our website, musicmusingspodcast.com. That is where we'll have all of our playlists, our episodes. If we're doing a survey or a poll, it'll be there as well. And any updates we will put there. And then, as always, subscribe to us on wherever you get your podcasts. And we will check you out next time. We will possibly have a special guest next episode, so stay tuned for that. And it's not JJ or Nathan, so
we love you guys, but
we have to have somebody else. So
yeah.
Be somebody else. We'll see.
Yeah.
But all right. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. If you have an idea for an intro or an outro that we could play on our show, please send to musicmusingspodcast@gmail.com. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas, please email us at musicmusingspodcast@gmail.com.